Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames. Earlier this year, Square announced that they were finally going to remake the most popular JRPG of all time, Final Fantasy VII. This got longtime fans naturally excited, but it also opened the door for a younger generation to see a glimpse into a classic genre that's taken more of a backseat to mainstream gaming in the recent years. So as the Year of Dreams comes to a close, let's take a look back at the most memorable moments in JRPG history. Obviously, this is going to be a spoiler-filled list. Also, it only includes games I've actually played, and is a mixture of influential and popular versus personal. So without further ado, let's kick off the most memorable moments in JRPG history. Number 1. Skies of Arcadia, A Sailor's Funeral. Skies of Arcadia was more or less Sega's last internally developed turn-based RPG, leaving behind a legacy that included the Phantasy Star series. Skies is a unique title, and not only because it launched on the beloved Dreamcast, but also because it bucked the trends of the genre at the time. One of the downsides of Final Fantasy VII's popularity was how its gloomy atmosphere and brooding characters influenced many other JRPGs for years to come, including the Final Fantasy series itself. Skies of Arcadia was a stark contrast to that with its Sega blue skies and lively main cast. What is interesting, however, is that the title offers a small amount of dialogue trees that will impact the main character's reputation by the end of it. So in reality, you could make Vice into a sobbing Final Fantasy sap if you were so inclined. Despite all of that, there is one moment at the end of the game that is not a dialogue tree that really shows his true character. After defeating the final boss, a younger Sephiroth with a haircut named Ramirez, Vice decides to honor his life with a sailor's funeral, despite the hardships he brought. It really shows how much of a welcome departure a protagonist like Vice is amongst the genre swimming with emotionless brooders, or doe-eyed shonen tropes. It would also sadly signal the last we would see of Vice for many years until Sumo Digital listened to fans, unlike Sega. Number 2. Final Fantasy VII, Death of an Ancient. No matter what you feel about it, the death of Aeris in Final Fantasy VII was a huge moment for the genre. While not the first party member death, nor even the first for a Final Fantasy game, the success of the marketing machine and popularity of Final Fantasy VII meant that losing a playable character permanently sent shockwaves for first-time players. And to be fair, it's actually a pretty good setup. Rather than drop out of the blue or stretch itself out way too long with an overdramatic sacrifice, Aeris' death comes after a desperate search to reunite with the estranged party member and a last-ditch plan to save the world. In a weird twist, her death actually brings out the humanity in Cloud, and really serves to make the player really want to kick Sephiroth's ass. Love it or hate it, the death of Aeris is a moment that is still talked about to this day, and transcended the genre as a whole to impact the entire industry. Number 3. Chrono Trigger, A Slip in Time. Time travel stories are always a tricky thing, and it's nigh impossible to find one without some plot hole. Still, they are a lot of fun to speculate with, and when they are done well, you can't help but put yourself in a what-if scenario when something major occurs. Cue the dramatic sacrifice of Chrono in the best Square Enix game ever, Chrono Trigger. While losing a love interest or a healer is shocking, having the main dude go and die on you would be coma-inducing. Luckily, this would not be the end of Chrono's story, as after the dramatic twist in the Age of Antiquity, the remaining party members then go on a globe and time-spanning quest to find a way to change the exact moment in time of Chrono's demise. The real emotional hit is the moment after succeeding, and the tear-inducing reunion of Chrono and Marle on the cliffside, as you now have both saved each other from oblivion and proven that true love stretches across time and space. Oh, and fuck Chrono Cross. Number 4. Grandia, This Isn't Goodbye. In the early to mid-90s, the developer Game Arts was quietly churning out some of the best RPG cast of characters across the first Lunar and Grandia titles. Originally meant to be a Saturn exclusive, Grandia was the Final Fantasy killer for the super hardcore fanbase that knew of its existence. While it would eventually make its way to North America with a downgraded port and even worse localization, the core story of Grandia was so good that it shined through anyways. There are actually a number of great emotional scenes to pick from in this masterpiece, so this was not an easy decision at all. When you start the game, you are nothing more than a couple of kids playing pretend in the streets. Eventually, through a series of events, you embark on a world-traveling journey. However, your loyal companion Sue is still a young child, and when it comes time to cross an ocean, you realize it's best to send Sue home. Her heart-wrenching departure would be enough, except Grandia makes it a double whammy, with a brilliant music track by Iwadare and Sue's final words to you and Fina. It's JRPGs at their finest, and only a shame that the rest of the series couldn't live up to this one. Number 5. Bitin Kaitos. I'm the bad guy? During the GameCube's lifespan, Nintendo money-hatted a deal with Namco to bring some RPG lovin' back to their console after the N64. The first was the most beloved Tales game in the West, while the second was a little-remembered RPG series from Monolith Soft and Tri-Crescendo called Bitin Kaitos. Bitin Kaitos was one of the last console RPGs to use pre-rendered background, and as such, they are gorgeous. The whole game is dripping with a unique style, and that would carry over into the gameplay and story as well. Unlike most games, you do not actually play directly as the protagonist. At the beginning of the game, you are tasked with naming a spirit that helps guides the player through the game. Every so often the main character might stop and ask you for your opinion on the matter, but it's easy to forget you are not actually playing as the blue-haired Callus throughout the title. This little fact leads into a great twist late in the game when you find out that Callus was actually working with the bad guys all along, and was simply duping the rest of the characters and you, the player, the whole time. It's a Shyamalan twist with a satisfying payoff in this beautiful and very different JRPG GameCube exclusive. Dishonorable mention. We couldn't simply do a video with nothing but praise, not with the Emperor of Hate, yours truly, at the helm. So my dishonorable mention goes to none other than Star Ocean 3 Till the End of Time. Star Ocean started out as a sci-fi futuristic JRPG series late in the SNES life that required a special chip in the cartridge to run the massive title. Part 2 on the PlayStation was released in America and found a cult following, so when it came time for Part 3 on PS2, everything appeared good on the surface. And then the big plot twist happened. In a move that would make Exhibit blush, it turns out that the entire game, and series for that matter, is really just a video game being played inside a video game. On top of that, the bad guys are actually just virus protection looking to squash programming bugs. Boy oh boy, is it hard to put into words how stupid this is. Not only was it a franchise suicide, it reeks of a young teenager writing fanfiction after spending too many long, lonely nights watching The Matrix. I find it hard to believe that nobody on the development team saw this and pointed out how incredibly dumb it sounded. But either way, it stayed, it stuck, and it caused me to immediately eject the disc from my PS2, put it back in its case, and drive to the nearest game store to sell it. I haven't touched the series since, and looking at Part 4, it doesn't seem like I'm missing much. The other mind-blowing part of all this is the fact that Tri-Ace hasn't retconned this. Instead, they continue to make prequels and interquels. Whatever their reasoning may be, this was the absolute dumbest moment in JRPG history. And that about wraps up my most memorable moments from JRPGs. Let me know what yours are, and I'll see you on the channel. Later, dudes!